Okay, team. This you can relax. This is the last show of the
It's like muck-up day.
of the year. Yeah. But well, it was muck-up day at Kirribilli House. What did you make of those protesters?
Look, are we surprised? I mean, these are the same bottom feeders who will, protest anything. I mean, but I have nothing against the right to protest. I'm suspicious of move-on powers, in fact, if they're applied incorrectly or badly drafted. But the right to peacefully protest does not give you the right to set up a shanty town anywhere you like. It's the same thing we saw, frankly, here in Melbourne a few years ago with the Occupy Melbourne Brigade that took it upon themselves to occupy public land. Fair enough. Make a point, go out and protest, but you have to act within the law, and that includes people like David Shoebridge from New South Wales.
An MP, I might add. We'll put some vision up there for you at home just in case you've missed it. But outside of Kirribilli House in Sydney, the Prime Minister's residence you all pay for, so you want it to look nice. There was a tent shanty town established. They refused to move on because the PM wasn't there. Sarah Hanson-Young, the Great Brains Trust from South Australia, Greens MP, she had this to say. I've got a grab for you.
We're out the front of the Prime Minister's house and he's not here. He's the Prime Minister of the country. He should be showing leadership and he's not. He's MIA. He's been MIA on climate strategy for months now. He's been MIA in dealing with this crisis as a national emergency and now we don't even know where the hell he is. He's just missing.
I might add the PM is at least on his holiday, taking his children away, paying for it himself. Rita Panahi, she took her daughter on a taxpayer-funded trip to Antarctica. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that is quite a pathetic display from the child senator, but it's what we've come to expect. The Prime Minister has been working ridiculous hours since being elected and since before being elected. Let's not forget the marathon election campaign. He's entitled to take a week off with his young family. And given that these responsibility for these fires doesn't fall under his office, it's a state-based issue, it is absurd that we're seeing this. But these are the same people who were supergluing themselves to roads a few weeks ago. Correct. It's the same people who organised the student strike so they can wag schools. So they will show up and protest regardless of what Scott Morrison does. And remember, we had a previous Prime Minister who would go out and fight bushfires and he got no thank you from this lot or no acknowledgement. They said he was a publicity stunt when he did it. So let's face it, a Conservative PM is always going to have these imbeciles protesting.
It's a very good point, actually. I might add that I spoke to the former Prime Minister the other day and he's out in the fire truck today fighting fires, so it was no publicity stunt. In fact, he's proud to say he's the Deputy Captain of his fire brigade. I think he thinks that's a great achievement in life, probably surpasses being PM. But the point, you're absolutely right. All of this, the attempt to use what is really tough on people in communities, 800 homes at this stage so early in the fire season have been lost, to use it for political means. The Greens are all over it. I don't see the Greens protesting about hazard reduction burns, do we, Gideon?
No, correct. Well, just to the point about making a political point of all of this, I think, going back to your editorial, Anthony Albanese, for him to refrain from doing that was a political masterstroke. I think that shows that he is actually quite good at reading the mood of the country and the popular mood. And I haven't really rated him as opposition leader so far, but this shows that he might be a serious contender.
Gideon.
He can see strategy
got that
beyond
right.
tactics.
No,
well,
but
sure.
he's been tin-eared fairly consistently.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
Maybe I'm being charitable around Christmas time, but so look, but again, you have to give him points for showing some sort of decency in all of this.
Yeah, and look, I have to add too, this is the insider information, but there's no doubt the PM would be getting serious briefings, even on leave. All Prime Ministers do. The briefings are available to him. I would be absolutely confident he'd be on the phone to Gladys Berejiklian, and she'd be on the phone to him too if she needed anything. So, people can rest assured we're not all riding on the abilities of Michael McCormack. Bushfires, climate change, that fight goes on. There has been, I think, a revelation. Oh, we probably thought it was there, didn't we, Rita? It wasn't news to us. The machinations and the activists that sit behind this group of ex-fire chiefs who are coming out trying to put climate change right into the middle of this current fight.
Yes, I don't think anybody was too surprised that Tim Flannery was part of the group funding them, or his group is essentially funding them, and these climate activists who are using their backgrounds to try to, again, gain political mileage. And I'm glad that there's actually finally been, from within the firefighting community, some real blowback against this. There's been a lot of people...
Correct. A lot of fireys have been calling into radio stations, putting in material of themselves into newspapers and elsewhere, saying that this is not what they're about, and nor do they agree with the ex-chief.
Let's just assume that people like me are wrong and these ex-fire chiefs are right, and it is caused by climate change. All right. Wouldn't it make more sense to take preventative measures to adapt, things like fire breaks, things like backburning, things like fuel reduction measures, than waiting for the rest of the world to give up on fossil fuels? Wouldn't that be a better way to prevent fires, even if you accept this ludicrous notion that climate change is causing what has occurred in Australia forever?
But let's not forget how they count emissions. So if there is a bushfire, the emissions from the bushfire don't count. If there's a hazard reduction burn, the emissions are counted. So it almost helps the Greens to wait for there to be a bushfire, because those emissions are allowed, and the hazard reduction it burns under the ridiculous tests of Paris are not counted. Now, that's one thing.
Why we signed up to this madness? Correct. I mean, this is just insane. And it's been fantastic to see firefighting experts like David Packham, who's also a scientist, come out and say what this group is saying. I think this group that numbers 29 ex-fire chiefs is patently absurd. For a fire to occur, you need certain things. You need dry conditions, heat, you need wind, you need fuel and a spark. What you don't need is coal-fired power plants. Like, to make that connection is so absurd. And if you do adequate fuel reduction, then you can reduce the intensity of these fires. So when they do occur, and we know 87% of fires are started by people, either deliberately or by accident. So when they does happen, you can actually tackle them, and they're not so intense that the firefighters can't get near them, which is what we're seeing at the moment.
And look, Black Thursday here in Victoria, 1871, burnt more than double what's been burnt so far in New South Wales. Now, that's a long time before the Paris Agreement.
And Packham has actually noted, I believe, that his view is that there's more fuel in Australia right now than at any time since human occupation of the continent. I mean, that is an extraordinary thing, and an explanation for what we're going through.
And that also means there's more people, there's more property. So when you do have fires, the damage is greater than it's been in the past. But we, at this point, still have fires in our history that are far worse than what we have seen in the recent decades.